The email arrived late one Tuesday, an elegant digital missive from my brother Ethan. The subject line, "Big News," felt like a bad joke. My stomach twisted with a familiar anxiety. Inside, a professionally shot photo of Ethan and Eleanor, his arm possessively around her waist, her ring catching the light, announced their engagement. The message was a brief, joyous declaration of love and future plans. My heart sank, not for lack of happiness for my brother, but for what I knew this represented. Eleanor Vance was a socialite, the kind of woman whose every post was a curated masterpiece, a world away from my life. I ran a timber business in the quiet mountains of upstate New York. My hands were rough, my flannel shirts were more practical than fashionable, and my days were dictated by the rhythm of seasons and the hum of heavy machinery. It was an honest, fulfilling life, but one my family, and particularly my mother and Eleanor's family, had subtly but effectively deemed less than. I had heard my mother years ago refer to me as her "dear sweet country boy," a phrase that always felt more pitying than affectionate. This new chapter, this wedding, was the ultimate stage for their world. The email mentioned a lavish celebration at the prestigious Oak Haven estate, with formal invitations to follow. I waited. Days turned into a week, then a month. No invitation. I called my sister Sarah, who worked in the city, her voice a thin line of discomfort. "Mom and Eleanor's mother are really in charge of the guest list," she explained, her voice dropping to a whisper. "It's a very exclusive event." The message was clear. I, the supposed country bumpkin, wasn't part of their exclusive, sophisticated world. A slow, hot anger, mixed with a deep ache of hurt, began to simmer. They wanted to shut me out? Fine. I would show them what I was capable of. A plan audacious and born of a wounded pride began to form in my mind. I spent the next few weeks on the phone, leveraging every asset I had, calling in favors, and pulling strings I'd never thought I'd need to. The quiet timber magnate was about to show them what real power looked like. Within a month, through a series of shrewd late-night phone calls and leveraging my considerable business acumen, I quietly acquired the struggling holding company that owned not just the Oak Haven estate, but also the wedding planning service they used. They were planning their perfect, exclusive wedding, and I, the man they tried to exclude, was now the one holding the deed. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for the next chapter of this incredible story. My first meeting with Ms. Albright, the head wedding planner, was a masterclass in professional tension. Her office, nestled in a historic building downtown, was a pristine sanctuary of design and logistics. Every surface was covered in swatches of silk, diagrams of seating arrangements, and binders filled with vendor contracts. She was an elegant woman in her late 50s, with a sharp, no-nonsense demeanor that I knew would not be easily fooled. She looked at me, a man in jeans and a worn leather jacket, with an air of polite confusion. "You're the new owner, Mr. Miller. I wasn't expecting—" She trailed off, her gaze taking in my calloused hands and the scent of wood smoke that clung to my clothes. "Yes," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "I'm also Ethan Miller's older brother." The name hung in the air like a dropped pin. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes, sharp and intelligent, narrowed just a fraction. She knew. Her tight-lipped professionalism was a silent acknowledgement of the family drama she was now unwittingly a part of. The truth of my exclusion, confirmed by a stranger's subtle reaction, was a painful, bitter pill. I quickly took control of the meeting, a silent assertion of my newfound authority. "I want to be heavily involved in the planning process," I explained, my voice a calm, firm command. "I'll be approving all major decisions." For the next 2 hours, we delved into a world I barely understood: floral budgets, wine selections, and the intricate dance of custom lighting. It was a universe away from my daily life of lumber quality and supply chain management. But I listened, asked precise questions, and took notes, my mind working to connect these foreign details to the logistical puzzles I solved every day. My plan was no longer just about revenge. It had become a personal challenge, a silent way to prove that my upbringing, my life, didn't make me less capable. As I stood to leave, Ms. Albright's parting words were delivered with a hint of something that sounded like grudging respect. We will, of course, keep you informed of every detail, Mr. Miller. We look forward to your extensive input. The subtext was clear. She knew I was here for more than business, but she also knew I was capable of getting the job done. The stage was set, and I was holding all the cards. My calculated silence lasted for a few weeks until the inevitable happened. A phone call from my mother, a bright, bubbly torrent of wedding news. "Darling, you won't believe it. The Oakhaven estate has a new owner, and he is a dream to work with. So professional, so attentive. He approved all of Eleanor's grandest ideas without a single question." Her voice was filled with a gushing excitement that twisted in my gut. My brother Ethan was on the line too, his voice a casual afterthought. "Yeah, the guy's a bit of a control freak, but he's got good taste. Surprisingly, the venues never looked better." The irony was so sharp, it almost physically hurt. They were praising me, the very person they had so cavalierly dismissed, for the meticulous work I was doing to make their dream wedding a reality. My hand clenched around the phone. The lie, which had started as a simple act of defiance, was now a complex web of deceit. I had a choice: confess everything and watch the carefully constructed facade crumble, or lean into the deception and see it through. I chose the latter, a new, more dangerous idea forming in my mind. This wasn't just about showing up. It was about forcing them to see me, to see the man they had so completely misjudged. I was no longer an invisible spectator. I was the very architect of their perfect day. The following days brought a flurry of new requests from Eleanor and her mother, filtered through Ms. Albright to me. A custom dance floor with a monogram, a specific rare type of orchid for the centerpieces, sourced from a specific greenhouse, an entire menu redesigned to accommodate a hyper-specific dietary plan. With each new request, my heart rate would quicken. I approved every single one, my silent power feeling both exhilarating and terrifying. It was a game I was winning, but the price of admission was a growing loneliness. The distance between me and my family felt wider than ever, a chasm of my own making, bridged only by my secret identity as the wedding's puppet master. The final walkthrough of the Oakhaven estate before the big day was a scene of perfect manufactured beauty. The overcast morning cast a soft, ethereal light over the grounds. I watched from a distance as my family, my parents, Ethan and Eleanor, walked through the grand ballroom, their faces alight with awe. Missy Albright, ever the professional, led the tour, pointing out the intricate floral arrangements, the soft glow of the bistro lights strung over the dance floor, and the exquisite table settings I had personally approved. "I can't believe we were ever worried about the new ownership," my mother said, her voice filled with relief. "He's done a spectacular job. This is beyond anything we could have imagined." Ethan, looking impeccably dressed and radiating a sense of quiet satisfaction, clapped me on the shoulder, a gesture of casual affection that felt like a lie. "Good job, man," he said, oblivious to the deeper meaning behind his words. "This whole thing looks perfect." Eleanor, for her part, simply nodded, her gaze sweeping over the room with a critical but ultimately pleased eye. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over me. On one hand, there was a deep, undeniable satisfaction in seeing the results of my hard work. This was a testament to my capabilities, a silent, powerful retort to their judgments. But on the other hand, the pain of their ignorance, the way they acted as if my role in this narrative didn't exist, was a constant gnawing ache. As they left, I pulled Ms. Albright aside. "It's magnificent, Mr. Miller," she said, her voice softer than usual. "This is one of the most well-executed events I've ever planned. You should be proud." The compliment was a small comfort, but it couldn't fill the hollow void inside me. This entire charade had proven my worth, but it hadn't healed the rift. If anything, it had deepened it. The truth was a ticking time bomb, and I had no idea when or how I was going to defuse it. I was trapped in my own deception, a silent and solitary architect of my family's perfect day. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for the next chapter of this incredible story. The week before the wedding, I found myself driving up to my parents' house. It was an old colonial, the same place where Ethan, Sarah, and I had grown up. The house was empty, my parents at a series of pre-wedding brunches and dinners, events that, unbeknownst to them, I had a hand in orchestrating. I let myself in with the spare key, the familiar scent of old wood and my mother's signature lavender cleaner washing over me. I wandered the quiet rooms, my footsteps echoing in the silence. A framed photo on the mantelpiece caught my eye, a candid shot of the three of us as children, our faces smeared with mud after a day of playing in the creek. I remembered my parents laughing, calling us their three little ruffians. The memory felt a million miles away from the polished, distant family they had become. A profound ache settled in my chest. This was what I missed. Not the lavish parties or the expensive suits, but the easy, uncomplicated love we had once shared. I hadn't embarked on this elaborate scheme to prove I was better. I had done it to prove I was still family. But in my attempt to assert my worth, I had only pushed myself further away, wrapping myself in a web of deceit. My phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "Dad and I are going for a round of golf tomorrow. You should join us." My heart leaped with a frantic, desperate hope. Maybe this was my chance to confess everything, to finally mend the fences. Then a second text followed. "Oh wait, I forgot you have to work. Too bad, man." The message was a cold splash of reality. I was still the country bumpkin, the one too busy with his practical hands-on work to join their sophisticated games. The lie had become my reality, trapping me in a role I never intended to play. I was an outsider, even when I was the one building the very foundation of their happiness. A few days before the wedding, Ms. Albright called me with a major crisis. The string quartet they had hired for the ceremony had a last-minute cancellation. "The first violinist broke his arm in a freak accident," she explained, her voice a frantic whisper. "We've called every available group in the city, but no one is available on such short notice for a gig this size." This wasn't a problem I could solve with money alone. I thought for a moment. My small, rural community had a vibrant, if less than formal, music scene. I knew a folk fiddler, a retired man named Gus who was a local legend. His music was raw, soulful, and deeply authentic, the polar opposite of the polished classical sound my family was expecting. The thought of bringing him in felt like a small act of rebellion, a way to inject a piece of my world into theirs. It wasn't about defiance, it was about finding a real, genuine solution to a problem. I called him, and surprisingly he agreed, his voice as weathered as old leather. "Just bring me a chair and a good mic," he said. "I'll play for the boy." This felt different. This wasn't about buying power or proving a point. This was about solving a genuine problem with a solution that came from my own life, my own community, a part of me they had so easily dismissed. The day of the wedding, I watched from the shadows as Gus set up his fiddle, a beautiful old instrument that looked a world away from the pristine backdrop of the Oakhaven estate. As he began to play a soft, soulful melody, his music filled the air not with the sterile perfection of a classical quartet, but with a warm, genuine feeling that resonated deep in my bones. It was the sound of home, my home. It was the only part of myself I had been able to genuinely share with them on this day. The wedding day was a whirlwind of emotion and calculated deception. I stood on the periphery of the Oakhaven estate, a ghost at the very heart of the celebration. The guests arrived in an endless parade of expensive suits and designer dresses, their laughter and chatter filling the crisp autumn air. My parents, radiating with pride, greeted everyone with radiant smiles, completely oblivious to my role as the unseen architect of their perfect day. The ceremony was breathtaking. Gus's fiddle music was a surprising, soulful highlight. As he played a gentle, heartfelt melody, a few guests, including my sister Sarah, were visibly moved, wiping away tears. His music brought a different kind of grace to the event, a humble authenticity that stood out against the backdrop of opulence. During the reception, I was a phantom. I watched from the shadows as my family toasted Ethan and Eleanor, their words full of love and praise. My heart ached with a profound loneliness. I had provided the stage, the setting, the very air they breathed for this moment, yet I was an unacknowledged force, an invisible spectator to my own creation. It was during the toasts that the moment I had both dreaded and anticipated finally arrived. My father stood up, cleared his throat and began to speak. "My son Ethan, I am so proud of you. You have built a wonderful life, a wonderful business, and to have all of our family here to celebrate, His voice trailed off for a moment. He glanced around the crowded room, his eyes scanning for something, for someone. My gaze met Sarah's across the room. Her eyes were wide with a sudden dawning comprehension. The realization of my absence, the glaringly empty chair at their family table, finally hit them, right in the middle of their perfect, meticulously planned celebration. The perfect charade, so meticulously executed, had one fatal flaw. It couldn't hide the truth of my absence. The moment of truth, the one I had orchestrated but never fully prepared for, was finally upon us. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for the next chapter of this incredible story. The realization that I was missing, while being the very person responsible for the day's perfection, hit my family like a physical blow. It was my sister, Sarah, whose gut instinct was always a few steps ahead of everyone else's. She excused herself from the table, her face a mask of polite composure, and found me on the darkened terrace, the cool night air, a sharp contrast to the heated atmosphere of the reception. A few lingering guests chatted idly 100 feet away, their laughter echoing hollowly in the darkness. Sarah approached me, her voice a low, urgent whisper that was a mix of disbelief and relief. "You're here," she said, her eyes wide, scanning my face. "The whole time. What in God's name are you doing?" I explained everything. The words tumbled out of me in a rush of pent-up anger and sadness, a raw, unfiltered confession of my wounded pride and my desperate desire to be seen. I told her about the email, the feeling of being an outsider, the overheard conversation, the agonizing decision to buy the company as a desperate act of belonging. She listened, her face a mask of shock, tears welling in her eyes as the pieces of the puzzle clicked into place. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I didn't know it was that bad. We just thought you were too busy." The excuse was hollow, and we both knew it. It was a comfortable lie they had all told themselves. Ethan soon joined us, a furious scowl on his face, his perfect veneer cracking under the pressure. "What is going on? Sarah said you've been here all night. You couldn't show up for my wedding, but you could hide in the bushes like some kind of ghost?" The hurt in his voice was more stinging than any angry words. "I was here," I said, my voice low and steady, "as the owner of this estate, not as your brother." The truth, now out in the open, was a bomb. Ethan's face went from anger to confusion, then to a profound, heartbreaking sadness. He looked at me, his own brother, as if seeing me for the very first time. The man he thought he knew, the country bumpkin, was now a complex stranger. The truth was out, and it was a devastating and beautiful mess, a raw wound on a night meant for celebration. The argument on the terrace was a quiet, devastating affair, a family drama playing out in the shadows of a perfect wedding. The grand ballroom behind us pulsed with light and music, a stark contrast to the heavy silence that had fallen between us. Sarah, ever the diplomat, stepped between us. Ethan, he felt pushed out. We all did it. We let this happen. She gestured back toward the opulent ballroom, the party still in full swing. "The wedding. It's perfect. It's more than perfect. But he did this for us. He did this to prove he's still a part of it." My brother's face softened, the initial anger giving way to a look of deep regret. "Did you really think we didn't want you here? I mean, Eleanor's family is a little particular, but you're my brother. I just assumed you were too busy with your thing." The word thing hung in the air, a final painful confirmation of their misunderstanding. He thought my life, my work, was just a trivial sideline, a hobby to fill the time. My business, my employees, my livelihood, it was all just a thing to them. That's when my parents, alerted by a panicked Eleanor, came outside. My father took one look at me, at the tears on Sarah's face, at Ethan's slumped shoulders, and the truth dawned on him too. He didn't say anything. He just looked at me, a father looking at the son he had accidentally lost. My mother, in a rare moment of genuine vulnerability, stepped forward. "We've been so wrapped up in all of this, the elegance, the appearances, we forgot what really mattered." Her hand, soft and manicured, reached for mine, calloused and rough. It was a simple, small gesture, but it felt like the first time in years she had truly seen me. not as a reflection of her desires, but as my own person. The wedding had been a success, but the real victory, the only one that mattered, was the quiet, painful, and long overdue conversation we were finally having. It was a conversation we should have had years ago, long before I ever felt the need to buy an entire company just to prove my worth. The reception continued, a beautiful hollow shell of an event. The energy had fundamentally shifted. The once vibrant family table, which had earlier been a bastion of forced smiles and polite conversation, now held a different kind of warmth, a fragile, raw, and long overdue honesty. We were still a family, but we were a broken one trying to heal, and the perfect wedding was a shattered mirror in which we were finally forced to see ourselves. We talked for hours, long after the last of the guests had left and the music had stopped. The vast ballroom, once filled with dancers and laughter, was now a cavernous space of silence, broken only by the quiet hum of the air conditioning and the distant clatter of caterers cleaning up. We sat amidst the beautiful but now meaningless debris of a perfect day. Half-empty glasses of champagne, scattered rose petals, and crumpled napkins. The conversation began with me, as it had to. For the first time, my parents and Ethan truly listened as I spoke about the timber business. I didn't just mention the work, I painted a picture of it. I described the smell of fresh-cut pine in the morning, the roar of the sawmills, the intricate logistics of moving timber from the mountains to the market. I told them about the men who worked for me, the families who depended on our business, and the deep abiding pride I took in creating something real and lasting, a legacy born not of inheritance, but of hard work and grit. It wasn't just a thing, it was my identity, a community I was responsible for. Ethan, his face a mixture of remorse and revelation, finally spoke. He confessed that he had been so focused on fitting into Eleanor's world, a world of private clubs and high finance, that he had lost sight of his own. He apologized for his dismissiveness, for assuming that my life was less complicated or important than his own. "I always thought you were just content," he admitted, his voice quiet. "I never saw how much you were building." Eleanor, who had joined us at the end of this difficult conversation, offered a simple, heartfelt apology. She sat on the edge of her chair, her expensive gown a stark contrast to the vulnerability on her face. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice small. "I really am. I never meant to make you feel unwelcome. I hope you can forgive us all." Her apology was genuine, a testament to a person who, despite her privileged upbringing, was capable of empathy and growth. The night ended not with a grand finale, but with a quiet understanding. The wedding had been a catalyst, an expensive, elaborate ruse that had forced us all to confront the unspoken resentments and the vast distance that had grown between us. The wounds were deep, and the road to healing would be long. There would be awkward conversations, lingering doubts, and the hard work of rebuilding trust. But as I finally left the Oakhaven estate, the first rays of sunrise painting the sky in soft oranges and purples, I felt a sense of peace. The lie was over. The truth was out. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt like I was home. My family had not just seen me, they had heard me, and in that small, quiet moment, I knew we had found our way back to each other. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for the next chapter of this incredible story.